So the main thing with this is I wanted for everybody to understand that the A2L versus the 410 and 22 swaps really isn't that big of a difference. Because when you're installing a unit, and you're going from a 410 to 454, you're going to remove that refrigerator. When you install that new condenser and new evaporator, which both have to be changed at the same time, all your refrigerants will be locked inside of your condenser. Now, some of the stuff that we have to understand is that you're going to want to, I prefer solder over the compression, because compression is a seal, it's just a green O-ring inside of it, and I have seen tons of those things fail and cause leaks. And so if the solder joint is done right, then you really don't ever have to worry about having to do that. The other thing is, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but once you put the refrigerant into the system, meaning that you pulled your vacuum, you've run your test, and you open up your clean valves, you do not start the AC up right away. You got to give the AC 30 minutes to an hour so that refrigerant can get through the system. If not, what I've been told is it'll blow the head off the compressors. So a lot of guys don't know that, and that's the reason that they have failures on the compressors. Another thing is, as he said, and I did not know this until today, so this is something I learned, the components are different on the interiors, especially on the inside. Even though you have the outside, I would think that it's just as important to change those to the A2L as well, if you make those changes, because all that stuff is inside of a small compartment, and if you have a leak within that small compartment, you could possibly have a problem. I've been looking at the things that I feel that we need for you guys for your sites. Another thing is if I'm correct, when you charge these units, you do not charge them with subcool and supercool. And when you open up the label, when you remove the cover plate, you're going to see a diagram that's got a picture. It's got the time, not the time, the temperatures outside, and you want to get it to within that superheat, which means you have to have a metering device on your high selection side in order to determine when it's correct. Because if it says 8, for example, it doesn't really matter what the gauges are saying on the new install. It can actually affect the unit due to the fact that it's not where it's supposed to be at. And all of the refrigerants all work on boiling points, which is what he was talking about. That's like with your 410A, just guessing what it's supposed to be isn't right, because what it ends up doing is you either overcharge it or undercharge it, and you're not getting that superheat portion that it needs. And so what that ends up causing you guys is compressor failures prematurely. And I can tell you from experience that I had much rather do PM on my units than have to replace an interior and exterior unit. Condensers and evaporators, some of those things up in the ceiling, they're really hard to get to, they're difficult to get to. It's a two-man job to get them down, it's a two-man job to get them up. And not only that, just taping the thing back together to your plenum can be another nightmare. So we understand that. I would like for you guys, especially for the near future, if you are going to replace a unit, that you guys email me, the regional, and Shelby. I want to try to be there on the first ones until I feel confident that you guys have it. This isn't something to be scared of. You know, the big key to it all is to pull that vacuum and make sure before you open up that system that it's good. Now, as far as working on the system, I don't care what refrigerant it is out there. If you've got a problem with part of the system on the inside, or even the condenser, you're going to remove the refrigerant. You're going to normally pump it back into the condenser, so you're not really going to have much refrigerant inside the system. So that's where you're going to want to recover that refrigerant, and then I would flush it out with some nitrogen just to make sure and then you can go in and do your repairs. You don't have to worry about something catching on fire or anything like that. Your welding blankets are great. I've used those a lot. Things that I see on properties that get me, because I know that it ends up costing you guys a lot more time, is somebody brought up earlier, like the weed eater gets into the thermostat wire. Well, we've got a property now that we're having to go through and install, and I'm not telling you guys to do this, but if you have to replace a piece because it's missing, put the thermostat wire inside the phone. And then that way, they're not getting to it. Plus, the electricians with the city, they don't like to see the wire nuts. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They don't like to see the wire nuts, and so they don't see the wire nuts if they're inside. Another thing I see a ton of is your 410s run at a really high head pressure, and I see missing service valve caps everywhere. Well, if you don't have a service valve cap on there, that is the backup for when it leaks. I personally don't like the little plastic ones. I like the brass ones, the old school ones, because you can put those on and torque them down, and they're not going. You're not relying on an O-ring, but those cost money, and that's something that, you know, on a budget purpose type deal you can do. Another thing is, I go out and I see these condensers, and like, you know, it's always funny in the industry that we talk about how we've got all this slow time, like we've really got a bunch of slow time in the winter months. We really don't have that much, however, it is slow. And that is a good time, in my opinion, to go through, spray down your condensers. If you spray down your condensers at the beginning of the year, you know that it's not an airflow problem outside. The same thing with preventative maintenance. I use an environmental friendly coil cleaner. I put it in a pump up sprayer. Those cans cost a ridiculous amount of money. I put on a coil cleaner on the side of the bottle, and I would go in and I would spray all the coils. You're in there, it's gonna take you an extra minute or two. It's not gonna make a huge effect the first time, but the second's gonna get better, the third's gonna get better, the fourth is gonna get better. Because a lot of y'all's units haven't, you know, haven't had good deals in a long time. Also, the tabs or the strips that he was talking about in the video, you know, putting those in are great because at least that will prevent a pipe from blocking up, and then you have more problems. So for me, a lot of my stuff has always been preventative maintenance so that I can try to make the equipment last longer, because at the end of the day, if I can make it last longer, I'll have happier tenants. But at the same time, my staff is happier because they're not out here having to change the compressor or condenser all the time. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? All right. So again, it's not, and there's no right or wrongs to this. You guys can email me, call me, text me, anytime. And I'm happy to respond. Some of our properties already have the new system. It's crazy because we've known for probably close to 15 years now that 410A was getting phased out. And I was previously at another company. We were still installing 410As. So it didn't make a lot of sense. And like he said, there's talk that this one may go out. You know, a lot of times on the original systems, I don't know how you guys know this, but a lot of them were propane-based refrigerants. And so you would actually go out and, I mean, there's gas condensers that people make. So the refrigerant has made a change, and it continues to make changes. I feel personally that part of that is due to the fact that it's a way for the HVAC industries to continue to make money by changing this stuff out all the time. Because, I mean, why would we go from R22 to 410? Knowing that 410 is going to get phased out. Also, anybody that doesn't have an EPA, please email me letting me know. I'm trying to get an EPA class scheduled and put together. But that's the main topics I have. Like he said, airflow is one of the most important parts. Cleaning those coils, getting a brush, brushing off the squirrel cage. You can only get to one side of it unless you pull it out, and pulling them out sometimes can be a nightmare. but at least if you can get the front side, you've increased it by 50%. I am working on getting, tools approved for next year that are gonna be needed, but, again, a lot of it is just, it's gonna be park related. So, no questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.